Happy Tuesday, tutors. Thank you for joining us today to hear from Allison Maldonado. Some of you may know her as Miss Allison at the Skid Row Learning Center, where she serves as regional coordinator and all-around boss lady.
That's right.
Today she will be presenting her 7th Tutoring Solutions webinar, giving us all some advice and tips to suit your students' needs. Please hold your questions until the end of the presentation, and if we have time, we will make sure that we get to them and she can answer a few of them. Okay, I will pass it off to Allison now so she can introduce herself and then we can go ahead and get started.
Hi guys, thank you so much for joining. I'm super grateful that everyone that's here takes the time out of their schedule to educate yourself, to educate the students. So I'm really grateful for that. I just want to start off by introducing myself and, letting you know why you should take the time out of your schedule to even listen to me. So my name's Allison. I have been with School on Wheels 7 years. Today is actually my anniversary, so yay for me. Before working with School on Wheels, I was a special education teacher for about 5.5 years. Prior to that, I worked in a community college setting, counseling non-traditional students. So I've basically been in the education field my whole life, considering that I was a student, and now I've been working in education after that. So thank you guys so much for joining. I do want to start off by saying that, like Katie mentioned, I've done a bunch of these seminars, workshops, and this was the most questions I've ever received. So I'm super grateful to see that. And just want to give you guys some general themes that we're going to be addressing today. So what I did was I went through all of the questions and kind of put them into small groups. So if you don't see the exact verbiage or wordage that you use to ask the questions, please know that it's still kind of intermingled within all of the different areas. So the first thing we're going to address is special needs, the different types that are out there, and the next steps. What do you do when you are aware of that situation? Next, we're going to talk about behaviors, the types of behaviors, management, and language that works very well to deal with behaviors. We're also going to move on after that to social emotional learning. This has come up more frequently in the modern times, where we're talking more about character traits and how to help students excel mental health wise and not just academic wise. Then we're going to talk about some resources. What do we have available, and what are some creative ways to find things or create things that are available to you during your sessions as well. I do want to give a couple quick disclaimers, only because there were so many questions. I do want to kind of give you guys some feedback right off the bat. So number one, when we talk about the different situations, every single environment is different. I might give you a tip, and in your head you're thinking, that would never work at my shelter, my location. Just kind of adapt it and see what you can think of to make it fit. So in the questions, it doesn't always tell me what your tutoring situation is. So just keep that in mind and really get creative, because you're going to be creative during your sessions. So get creative while you're listening to the tips for your sessions. Ages as well. I might say some things that you might think, okay, my student's way older. That sounds a little childish. Please, same thing, just adapt as needed and work with what we have and how the student acts. Also, details, same thing I mentioned earlier. I might not know these specific details about your student, or I've never met them, so please know that this advice is purely on a basis of just the information I was provided with the questions and my experience kind of adapting. And finally, just make sure that you're individualizing to your student. Come up with multiple plans. The goal of this workshop is you always have a plan B in your back pocket, so that even when you show up to the session and you're like, well, that didn't work, you're like, let's do it this way. If that didn't work, let's combine A and B and kind of utilize this to spread out your creativity. I'm in no way wanting you to take my ideas and use them perfectly. I'd love the adaptation, the creativity, the individualization for your student. Also, main points versus thorough. Basically, I'm just kind of go through the main points of things. If you want more thorough information, at the end of the workshop, I'm actually going to provide you with a list of workshops we do already have available that can extend upon my notes and tips along the way. All right, now that we got the technicalities out of the way, we're going to get started right away on special needs. We're going to talk about right away, I want to define special needs. Automatic stereotype for special needs is a student with a deficit, a student that is less than another student or lacking something than another student. In the academic field, special needs also applies to students who are excelling. Gifted students have special needs. They need accommodations in the classroom in case they finish early, they get bored, leads to behavioral issues. So please remind students that hearing special needs, that stereotype and the connotation behind it, it's not really valid towards everybody. Special needs are also out there for students that have, hearing impairment or behavioral issues. So it's not just they can't learn the same as everybody else. Special needs is a pretty broad subject. Also letting you guys know, as tutors, special needs are very difficult to identify. It is a long process. It is not a one-time doctor's appointment, one-time observation. This is a long time. Student support team is a group of people that get together and analyze the student, do observations. So there's literally a team of people that get together and take the time to identify what is happening with the student. So this is a long process. It could take weeks because they need to do observations. They want to make sure it's not just a hyper day. They want to make sure it's not just a tired day. So please know that odds are you're probably not going to be identifying in your sessions, but you can identify little things that you might notice. You might not be labeling, but you can identify and help. We're going to talk about the certain types we're going to talk about they're called SLDs. So if you ever hear that language with teachers, SLD stands for specific learning disability. That counts for a multitude of ideas and topics. So just letting you guys know that does kind of do more of a broad. It connects more to like the audio visual and different needs like that. And then there's the physical symptoms, stuff that is more physical, the hearing impaired, the vision impaired, a traumatic brain injury, different things that aren't necessarily a processing, but more of a physical need that the students have. All right. So right away, one of the topics that was requested was dyslexia. So I would like to first let you guys know that dyslexia it's tough for the student, very much so. I have right here at the bottom some visual examples of what dyslexic students might see. Once again, I say might. They also can see it in different ways. Dyslexia is defined by the swapping, mirroring, changing, turning, and melting of letters together. Basically, it's a visual processing connected with a cognitive processing. So the student has a hard time. They may see stuff like this. I love the teapot example because just looking at it, the first one's spelled correctly, and right away you go to different ones, and you can already see how letters look so similar to each other, and how easy it is to flip over an E and all of a sudden it looks like a G. How easy it is to flip over an A and it looks like a B with that little handle sticking up. So just being able to recognize that sometimes that's what your student sees, you want to be able to adapt and help them out. There is no specific test to mark a sign of dyslexia. The reason for that is, once again, it's something that you need to observe. There are different forms of visual impairment, so you want to make sure, or processing impairments. Then once again, the student support team will join that. Tutors will usually never be on a student support team, but you may be consulted. There's a chance that the mom might say, hey, have you noticed this, and ask your opinion. But please don't feel like you're ever be showing up at the campus and being asked to be a part of the big teams. If you ever want to experience what it's like with dyslexia, I would try writing with your non-dominant hand. Notice the real hesitation you have when figuring out which way you should be writing, which way the S should go, which way the B should go. If that's with your non-dominant hand, that's what dyslexic students are feeling with their dominant hand at all times. That constant hesitation of what do I write? How does it go? Which way does it go? So that's a good little trick for yourself to kind of feel what your student's feeling. They also have the audio and visual discrimination of dyslexia comes in that students misread. They have a hard time with processing the letters and the words and the jumbling. So they get tired. Imagine like looking at the yellow example I have here, trying to read that just to try it out. Imagine all day and you have no other option beyond that. That's where our kids' eyes get tired. It connects a lot to ADHD because they do get frustrated. They don't want to read. They might be doing activities to distract from the reading. So a lot of times it also connects with ADHD or is identified as ADHD. So like I said, a lot of this, it does take time to identify and process. Next, I'm going to give you guys a little bit more information and some tips. So there are some more. Dyslexia is the most common. I do want to point out that there are other visual auditory issues that they might be dealing with. Dyscalculia is basically dyslexia, but with numbers. They might see a 3 backwards. They might connect a 3. It looks like an 8. The decimals get all jumbled. So a lot of those kids need graphing paper to keep everything in check. They need that very specific large writing because the same thing you saw with the letters happens with numbers. Dysgraphia is basically a process with writing. So I mentioned writing with your non-dominant hand. That's for students that can see what they're supposed to be doing. They understand it, but their brain and hand are not connecting to what should be doing. So writing is actually an issue as well, along with processing. Processing connects to all of these. It's the connection from processing what's happening in your brain and what your body's doing, and even your brain trying to understand what you want it to do. So those are the most common ones you're going to see. So I like to throw that in there because dyslexia is always the most heard of, but it happens in math a lot as well. So please keep that in mind, that if your student's experiencing this in English, they're experiencing it in math. Some tips you could do, right away, the students are experiencing a sensory overload. They are not going to be able to copy things down because it's hard for them to process and go back and forth. So being able to verbally tell them, verbally say it instead of write this down, copy this. Being able to say, can you copy the words, blah, 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 and they can do that way as well. Comprehension is very lacking with dyslexia because they're trying so hard to read, they're not remembering what they read. So even if your student's reading, maybe you could sit there and take some notes for them. And being like, okay, this is what I read, I remember you reading. Number one, it's going to boost their confidence because somebody's understanding what they're reading. And number two, you're creating some reading notes and study guides for them. And that creates a bond where you guys are supporting each other. A color overlay is a really cool system you can get. It's literally a divider. They have these really cool plastic dividers you can get. And what's going to happen is the colors help students focus on a specific section of the paper. The color is going to help their eyes refocus from the whiteness all around. It also reconnects them to what they're reading and avoids that overload. These are really easy to make. If you want to buy a pack, they're like $2. The School on Wheels program has some. I know here at the Skid Row Center we have some, so you can even ask your coordinator and we'll send them your way. But you can cut them into all different shapes, sizes, cover the whole page, cover a strip based on your student's needs, and you can make them together so it connects to another bonding opportunity. The next one, I got an idea. Actually, I got this idea from my mom. She was cutting coupons and couldn't read the expiration date, so I downloaded a magnifying glass app for her and realized she was using it for my nephew when they were doing homework. So right away I was like, ding, that definitely helps as well for students to see. It helps a lot with math because you're looking at one problem. You're sticking on that one section under the magnifying glass. A fun thing you can do for students with dyslexia is you really want to work with sight word recognition. Excuse me. Playing games where there's multiple letters and they have to kind of pull from that. I found this really cool app where it literally gives you a couple pictures and then it gives you a bunch of letters and you spell the word. So number one, it's comprehension, it's connection. What do all these pictures have in common? Let's talk about it. It leads to discussions. It's a game. Then the students are learning how to write. They already see how many letters are necessary. They get to see what letters are available to them, and they're facing the correct direction. So it's a little bit more of an interactive way to give them those sight words and help them kind of memorize and feel a little bit more confident when they're working with, when they're reading in general. One more thing I wanted to mention real quick is please remember that you're not diagnosing, that if you do see anything that you want to point out, please let the parent know about what you observed, not what you're diagnosing or what you're analyzing. Just say, hey, I noticed they always write their B's backward. Did you notice that? Or has the teacher said anything? And just leave it at that. Don't say like that's a sign of dyslexia or have she ever been, really want to keep it appropriate and just kind of share those observations together. All right. So next, we're going to move on to behaviors. The reason I'm going to behaviors next is because when you're dealing with special needs, you're going to get some behaviors. When I say behaviors, I don't always mean disruptive behaviors. I do mean positive behaviors as well. So when we talk about behavior, it's in general, like, what are some common things that we want the students to take away and learn and behave and interact in society? Number one, right? Okay. So one of the requested topics was cursing. This is very tough. It is a learned habit. They have literally been taught that these words are okay. They have either been spoken to that way or it's a group acceptance. One example would be, I had a young student who cursed a lot and came to find out that his family was in, his parents were in a gang, and just that environment, there was a lot of cursing for him specifically. Not saying that's a total for every student, but for him specifically, I asked him, where did you learn these words, or why do you like saying them so much? And he said, he told me about the situation. That's what they say at the parties. So right away I was like, oh, you've learned this. You think it's okay. So right away, think of your own personal habits, how hard it is to break those. A personal habit I'm trying to break right now is trying to avoid saying homeless student and trying to say student experiencing homelessness. Take away that adjective for them. So same thing, you can tell the student of a habit you're trying to break and explain to them about that. I also talk to them about time and place. I will literally tell high schoolers and middle schoolers, sometimes when you're with your friends, you are going to curse. When you're older, it's in a certain environment, but you can't do it at work. You can't do it in this environment. If you are meeting in a job interview, you can't curse. So being able to tell them that they should find an appropriate time and place. Think about the future. Think about those habits you want to adopt now. And remind them that they might be in an unfamiliar setting, and that might lead to the anxiety where the curse words are coming out, and just helping them come up with those skills to think before you speak. And I know that's easier said than done, but like I say, most of these things we're talking about are just learned skills in general. You also want to talk to them about the tone and intent of what they're saying. For older students, you can use the word denotation and connotation. Once again, adapting for your age. Tone and intent. I grew up in a household where part of my language, if anybody thinks this, but damn was a very bad word. I hear students tell each other to shut up. And in my household, that was a bad word. So I go, oh, they said shut up. But some kids, that's so common. So being able to remind them of the tone and intent, and being able to tell them, what feels better to you? Being told to shut up, or being told to please be quiet? Being told to lower your voice? Being told to control your volume? What feels better? What's the tone and the intent behind what you're saying? And that leads to those replacement phrases. What can you say instead? What are some replacement things you can say when you get frustrated? Not even phrases, just sounds. If you get frustrated, be like, arr, grr, and just having some emotion versus the cursing and those, so to speak, F-bombs that you might be experiencing. We're also going to talk about high energy students. High energy students, they're fun. The first thing I can say is you have to use it. You have to take advantage of it because you're not going to be able to calm them down. Right away saying stuff like, don't do that, don't do this, it's not going to work. They are full of energy, so their brain is working faster. They're going to hear don't and just want to do something else. So you want to redirect. If a student is constantly, let me think of some silly thing, kicking the next kid under the chair, I would say something like, it would be really great if you just kept your foot to yourself, or I'm sure if this was happening, you wouldn't want it to happen to you. Let's control our legs. Let's turn our body and sit differently. Maybe we could sit on our legs. Let's find a solution besides just saying, don't do that. Refocus that energy. I have some pictures here for little mini strategies you can utilize, some DIY, so to speak. Being able to utilize that energy and transfer it. You want to transfer that energy into the appropriate place. Out of the brain, into the feet, where they can play with the resistance band around the chair. If you work out, you probably have a resistance band that you could bring every once in a while. I have a tutor who at her shelter got some pool noodles and wrapped them around the bottom of the chair, made some really cool things. A beach ball they can sit on, depending on their age. You don't want to give a teenager a beach ball, pop it. Thinking about a soccer ball under the chair that they can rock under their feet. Tennis ball under their foot that they can rock back and forth. Transferring that energy out of the distraction in the head into a part of the body. Even thinking of it in adults, fidget spinners, fidget things, pen clickers in the meeting, they're transferring their energy. Give a kid's transference as well. Coping skills for refocusing. I literally hear, any tutors here from Skid Row, hi, and I hope you are doing great. But also wanted to mention, like, we do meditation here. We will have the students sit down for a few minutes and like think about something that happened in your day. That was positive. Now let's take that positive feeling into the next part of our day. Let's think about something that frustrated us during the day and let's shake it out and move on to a new thing. Older students, think about something that frustrated you, write it down in a couple sentences and rip that paper up. You know, figure out a coping skill to move on, utilize that energy, and help them refocus. All right. Next thing we're going to go over group management in general. That was a topic that kind of popped up a lot. So we're going to talk mostly about increasing focus in group settings. Group settings are tough. Skid Row, we have about 45 to 50 to 60 kids a day, and focusing is always an issue. Find some structure. Once again, variations for your location. I'm not sure where you're working with, but whatever you can do. Design a divider. This is a great project you can do with your students. You can just get some paper, this is like, the top one is really cute, like decorative duct tape, and you can just get some manila folders, put some cute posters on there they can design together. The bottom one's great. You can make a study guide so the kids have like info on it. I tried to find some of the study guide examples for older students, but they have a lot for younger, but you could definitely add up there like parts of speech and alliteration and different things like that for the older students. It works great because, number one, it's personalized. The student designed it. The student has a say, so they're going to want to use it. Number two, because it's personalized, it doesn't feel like a punishment. It doesn't feel like you're being turned away from everybody, even though the other ones are the ones talking. It's teaching them that skill of, if you're not comfortable in this situation, but we're here, let's figure out how we can adapt to it. If there's noise around us that are distracting us, let's figure out how we can adapt with that. And that also connects with, turning your desk, sitting away. I'll have a student sit on the floor in a different area just so they feel separated from the different area. On top of that, you can turn it into a discussion. What's so interesting about what you're staring at? What's distracting you? Why would you prefer? I take that back. I try not to say why, because why is a very hard concept for students. But even just saying, while you're watching that, what are you feeling? What's interesting about it? And then leading that into, well, the longer we watch them, this is going to affect your work. So the more you watch them, this is kind of your free time right now. It's taken away from our video game time in the end. It's taken away from our tic-tac-toe time at the end. So if you want to use your free time distracted, fine, but let's get refocused. I even have students where we'll track, and I will literally stare at them and kind of note that they've been staring at another student for 2 minutes and walk over and be like, you could have been 2 minutes further along on this worksheet, but instead you chose to do this. Let's refocus and catch up on those 2 minutes. So they're understanding that these distractions are affecting their growth and affecting their time management. Once again, the words you're going to use are going to be different. I'm not going to tell a kindergartner, let's refocus, your time management's off, but I am going to show them, like, if you have these 2 minutes and you're focusing here, these 2 minutes are leaving your playtime later. And kind of putting up the 2 fingers and just kind of giving them that visual of the 2 little fingers running away. It's like your free time's leaving, and giving them that kind of visual guidance. Transitional meditations, I kind of mentioned them earlier, but they're very helpful, helping the students refocus into the space. They're excited to see you. They're excited to be in this environment. So that might be where the lack of focus can come from. They're not with their parents. They're not in a therapy session with a caseworker. So being able to help them refocus and understand. You can even do meditations before, during, and or after. A lot of times after works really well, is so you can kind of end the session on a positive note and reflect on your day with your student. Once again, all of these can be adapted and suited to your needs. So I hope that helped a little bit. And if it didn't, we got more. So another thing you could do if you're in a group environment, I got this idea actually from some tutors here at Skid Row. I would visually see them with a notepad and writing down the students' names that day and writing down a note of what the issue was. And the next week, when they worked with that student again, they just went back to their notes and was like, okay, last week you were really struggling with addition and your homework says subtraction. What can we do right away? You know, then they automatically have a template, so to speak, of where to go from the beginning of your session. And even honestly, you can have the student enter it at the end of the session, be like, hey, what was your high? What was your low? And that way they're also keeping track, like a little mini journal between the two of you. In larger group settings, if you show up to your group setting and there's a lot of kids and a little bit of you, I love color cards or any type of identifier so that the student feels like they are getting a voice, but they're not sitting there with their hand in the air getting tired. It's also for the kids that are too shy to raise their hand. It's for the kids that are too nervous to ask for help. They have these little cards here where they can literally just put them in front of them. I've even had students where they're on the back of the chair so the other kids don't see. Whatever you need to do. But this way it gives you a visual as well of where you need to go, where you need to be in that room, and where's the best place to be. Even if you see 2 or 3, I'm stuck, maybe those 2 or 3 I'm stucks are all doing the exact same assignment. Great, let's combine you guys. And it gives you a logistical assistance versus a figure it out as you go along system. And one thing I didn't put on here, but I do want to mention for group tutors, you're a group, you're a community, you're a team. Communicate with your other tutors. Get each other's email, get each other's cell phone numbers. If you're able to text and say things to each other, it always works. And it has that added support. You're no longer in a group setting. You are no longer a one-on-one tutor in a group environment or a solo volunteer. You are now a part of a group. Once again, there's also more webinars full on that for the whole hour, they talk about group tutoring. I'm going to give you some information on that at the end, but just FYI for now, that is a possibility that there are more places to look into and a lot more ideas. Also wanted to note that if you're anywhere near the Skid Row location and you want to do a observation and kind of see a group setting, you're also welcome to contact me and we can kind of get that on the books and scheduled for you. All right. So next, we're kind of transitioning over to social emotional. The reason for this is because those behaviors are occurring with social emotional issues. Negative or positive behaviors come from a feeling. One of the things that was asked of me is how does a student express distress? What do we do if a student expresses some distress towards us? I took some feedback from a mental health seminar I attended and kind of reworded it. And I always wanted to tell people right away, acknowledge, validate, and then meditate. So you're going to acknowledge the student. Thank you for telling me. I appreciate that you shared that with me. Thank you so much for being open. Your honesty is awesome. Something like that to acknowledge that they said it. You want to validate them, but without using I statements. You don't want to say, I have been through that too. I get it. You want to validate them by saying, that's a valid response to that situation. That's an accurate way to feel. That's a feeling. Even just saying that, that's a feeling. You feel something. Good for you for identifying that. But you want to take it away from saying, I get it. I understand. The kids might, in their head, they don't know if you have been homeless or not. They don't know if you have been in any situation. So they might look at you and right away be like, you don't get it. You don't understand. What's the point of telling you? Like, take away that I statement and revalidate the student. You want to meditate on it. When I say meditate, I don't mean linger. I don't mean assess. I literally mean, now that you talked about it and shared that with me, do you feel a little bit better? Okay, now that that's out, can we take some deep breaths together and refocus and be like, oh, that's off our shoulders, shake it out. Meditate on it and accept it, absorb it, move on from it. because you're not a therapist. You're not there to turn it into a long session where that's all you're talking about is the distress. Use it in your session. Tell them later on, you remember what you told me earlier? You just got through all of this math. You can get through that too. Use it. Turn it back around and reconnect it so that they feel that resiliency and the grit that we always talk about. You want to avoid slang. The reason for this is because if you sound silly, you feel silly saying slang words, you sound silly saying those slang words, and the kids will see that. They will feel very unreal. They will feel kind of talked down to, or that you are not being genuine. So if you're not the person that's going to say, oh, that party was lit, don't say that. Don't tell the kids, stuff like that. Keep it casual, but relatable. Avoid personal story time. If a student tells you something, please don't turn it into, I remember when this happened to me, this is how I dealt with it. Once again, they are not you, you are not them. So avoid that personal story time. What you want to do is you can use it in your head to help you think of what you did to solve it, how you handled it. But I would avoid pushing that onto the student and saying like, I get it. I know exactly what you're feeling. I had a friend who did this. It's not the same. You're not them. The friends aren't the same. So just keep that in mind as well. Another thing that was asked was grit and resilience through bullying specifically. But the great part is grit and resiliency is multifunctional. Once you learn that grit, it really kind of sticks with you. I do want to preface this by telling you guys the difference between grit and motivation. You could be motivated to do something, but once you start it and it gets hard, you need that grit to get through it. I could be motivated to learn chess. When it gets difficult, I need that resiliency and that grit to keep pushing through the hard parts about it or the strategies I can't remember. So reminding them that motivation and grit are two different things. You could be motivated all you want, but it's not going to get you through it. It will help you, it will guide you, but you need that extra push and strength when the going gets tough, so to speak. When we're talking about bullying specifically, it is a very difficult subject. It is sensitive, it is tricky, but there are some things that I think of to bring my mind back to opposed to feeling overwhelmed by the bullying aspect. Right away, I talk to my students about what was happening to that person that brought that anger on. So making them aware of why people might bully. This student might bully because they have abuse at home. They might be bullying because they have been bullying and they have decided I'm going to retaliate. They may be bullying because they are bullied by their siblings. Reminding them that it's not a personalized thing. It is a pay it forward, so to speak, a negative pay it forward. Everybody says the contagious smile. Anger and bullying is contagious as well, unfortunately. So being able to tell your student and make them aware that this student, your bully probably is dealing with A, B, and C, and it's coming out as bullying. So taking that away. It's not always going to work. It's a step. You want to review future enforced interactions. Right now, yes, you are in the school with the student. You have no choice. But in the future, you will have separation. You will be away from them. You will get to choose the school you go to. You will get to choose the friends you have. Giving them that perspective of right now, this feels horrible. This feels painful. It feels hurtful. But you've experienced other stuff that felt that way as well, and we are still here. We have laughed together in A, B, and C moment. You will have those happy moments in A, B, and C future. So just reminding them that this happened today. Let's use it and grow and group. Also, what I find tends to work for students, I really don't try to push it, but videos of celebrities talking about how they were bullied in school or they had issues and now their bullies are coming up to them like asking for concert tickets to their show, or their bullies are now coming up to them saying like, I love your TV show. So being able to see that your situation and that bully is not sticking by you the rest of your life. If that bully happens to be a family member or somebody you are stuck with right now, same thing I said, review the future. Chosen family, chosen future family, and teaching them that grit and resiliency to get through it. And if you need to use those videos of celebrities saying like, it gets better. I think that's what it is. It gets better. It's true. It truly does get better. And I tell my students all the time, Miss Allison is loud and she's in charge. She's the boss lady, as Miss Katie lovingly said. But Miss Allison was not the boss lady in middle school and high school. Miss Allison was the bullied lady, the quiet reader in the corner who sat by herself lady. And when I tell them that, they all look at me like I'm lying. And I have to explain to them, no, it took me time to get out of my shell. It took me through college. It took me this confidence to get to this point. And using that, and once again, it's kind of using an I story, but it's more of a powerful, it's not an advice. It's like, this gets better. So they can get that celebrity video and like get you as well. All right. Next, we're going to talk about motivation, because like I mentioned, grit, motivation, two kind of different things. So right away, one of the main questions was asked for motivation. What's the point? What is the point of all of this? That existentialism, like, why am I doing this? I agree. When I was in high school, I completely was like, what is the point of algebra? Why do I need to know what is an imaginary number? Why are we imagining things? So you need to find that point. You need to connect the dots, so to speak. So right away, one of my favorite things to do here at Skid Row is a website called the California Career Zone. We address it during the advanced trainings. So if you've attended, awesome. If you haven't, you will be. The California Career Zone is literally a website where you go in and you tell the website what you want for your future. This is the lifestyle I want to lead. This is who and how I want to be. They then will tell you how much money you need to make and what classes you need to take, and it builds that connection to what your students need to see for the future, that motivation, so to speak. Next, talking about unexpected jobs. When kids think of what are you going to do when you grow up, doctor, lawyer, fireman, policeman. Not that there's anything wrong. They're all bomb. Yay for teachers. But there's unexpected jobs. You could literally be an ice cream taster. You could literally create greeting cards for your life. You could do these kind of unexpected jobs that are out there that kids don't think of and that they might get excited about once they finally learn about it. So teaching them those different things and watching different shows, just looking at any item around the room and being like, look, those sunglasses, somebody had to design them. Somebody had to put them, build the mold. Somebody had to figure out which plastic worked. Somebody had to do a focus group. There's a bunch of steps into everything. So helping them see that expansion. Talk about people who switch jobs, letting them know that you could be in one position for 20 years and all of a sudden decide, I want to do something totally different. That's fine. The motivation is to learn, grow, and experience. So what is the point? The point is to be able to do all of these different things and feel all these different emotions and experiences. So you don't feel stuck. So you're not at one position. You have that ability to completely change your life. Once again, going to just actors and stuff, being able to find those actors that didn't become famous till they were like 40 and stuff, or they did this for X amount of years and all of a sudden. So that would be really helpful as well. The next parts, I'm actually going to go a little bit faster because we're kind of running out of time. So please excuse my swiftness. More motivation. Relate to current likes. If they love sports, change the math problems, reward them to points. If they really enjoy musicals, have them sing to you while they're reading. Relate to their current likes so that they see that you can pull fun out of anything, that you can accommodate yourself. It also reminds them that everything connects. I tell students all the time, you might not think you need math, but you need to pay credit card interest and stuff. Please excuse the sounds in the back. It's just fire trucks and stuff. But helping them relate, like, what is the point of this? If they really relate to rappers, they need beats. They have beat counts. You have to have iambic pentameter, tone, melody. They need to know all of that. So relate and turn that lack of motivation into motivation. Simple phrasing, even if they're still not feeling it, you have to remind them, like, you have to do what you have to do to get what you want. Like, if you want this, you have to learn A, B, and C. If you want to be a teacher, you have to get through algebra in high school. If you want a high school diploma, you have to get through these things. So letting them know that, yes, you're not going to like every single thing you have to do, but it's going to get you to what you want. That grit, resiliency to get through what you don't like, to get through what motivated you to begin with. Letting them know that it is completely okay with what they are feeling. So saying like, I have no problem not liking calculus, but I see a problem with you quitting. I have no problem with you being stressed about science, but I have a problem with you giving up. So validation, like I mentioned, validate. You acknowledged, you validate, and now you're going to meditate. What are we going to do now? You can also make sure you're replacing the I don't knows. That's going to narrow down their need. If you're constantly hearing from your student, I don't know, I don't know, I don't know, where do you go from there? You know, what do you do? So teaching them to say like, I don't understand this part. I'm confused here. I don't know what this word means. I didn't understand what you said. Number one, it's going to lower your frustration level because you're not trying to solve a Rubik's Cube in their brain. And number two, it's going to help the students' communication skills. It's connecting back to that social emotional learning. It's going to help them in the classroom tell their teacher, I didn't understand this part. I'm confused here. What do I do? And it's going to narrow down their needs so they're not feeling overwhelmed again with the whole worksheet. They're going to be like, we need to work on this right now. And that's it. So hopefully all of these will help. One other thing is this lovely picture I have here. This is a great way to show students the roller coaster, so to speak, of emotions that they might be going through, that it does take multiple steps to get to the yay, yay, go me portion where they feel accomplished and they feel like they did a lot. So being able to sit with your student and address these different steps with them and to be able to say like, yeah, right now you can't do it, but do you want to do it? Do you want to try? What do we do next? What do we see? So to be able to help your student self-assess, which leads to self-advocacy. If you know who you are and what you need, you can speak for who you are and what you need. So one thing I wrote down but didn't put on here I wanted to mention as well in regards to motivation is if you yourself have shown up to this tutoring session and you're having a day, you personally are not feeling 100% motivated or you're a little tired or you're a little frustrated, acknowledge that with your student. Meditate together. Let them know, I had a rough day at work. I'm a little frustrated from the day. I'm excited to be here, but I want to get rid of the frustration. Can you help me? You know, teaching them that you yourself as an adult or anyone of any age still needs these coping skills. So that to me is very vital. I thoroughly enjoy, we meditate with our students at Skid Row. We have a refocus room. Even giving a few minutes to reflect is super beneficial, and I hope that it helps you when you're working with your student. All right. So now we're going on to the next topic, which was general resources and materials. This is a very broad subject, and it kind of brings me back to the disclaimer of every student's individual, every situation is going to be different, reminding you to have a plan B in your back pocket, and just being prepared for anything. One of the topics that was asked was, what do you do when your student's homework is way above their ability level? This is tough because you have to deal with multiple factors. You have to deal with your student not getting their work done. You have to deal with your student's frustration level of having homework they can't do. You have to deal with their desire to get it done and being worried of not turning it in. So there's a lot of things that come with just being below level. So being able to think of that and reminding and addressing that and using that to ensure you're not increasing the stress level. If you can, contact the teacher or parent. The reason you'd want to contact them is because you can address and let them know we're struggling with the homework, so we're still going to do work. We'll just staple it to the original homework or paper clip it to the original homework and see if we turn it in, show you we're working on things, prove to the teacher that the student's not lying when they say, I just didn't the homework was too hard for me. That it gives that student that self-empowerment to say, like, I had struggled with my tutor. Here's what we did, but I still did something. It gives them that sense of accomplishment so that they don't feel as if they can't do anything. You want them to feel as if they can do something. So being able to talk to the parent and say, is this something we can even do? And if the parent's not comfortable with you telling the teacher, maybe the parent's comfortable being the one to tell the teacher or writing the note on the homework to say, this is the situation. Unfortunately, beyond that, there's really not much more because the student's just going to have to explain to the teacher why the homework's not done. Even if the homework's way above their level, you don't want to struggle with your student through it together. You can cherry pick and maybe say, like, we're going to do all the ones up until this step and then turn in what we did and I'll leave you a note. But that's why I really wanted to address this question, because even for me, it's difficult. The teachers, you don't know the teacher. They might not understand. They might not know they're in a homeless situation. The student might be new, so they don't know their ability levels. They might just think they're being defiant and not doing the work. Or they might completely believe them and say, thank you for turning this in. You never know. So give them those options. Another question that was asked was assessments. School on Wheels has a bunch of assessments you guys can utilize, and they're great. I use them here. We are working on adjusting them so that they're greater, but they are good and useful as of right now. To make progress in your assessments, number one, involve the student. Do they even know what their goal is? Because if they have no point to the goal, there's no motivation. There's no reason to have grit to get through it if there's no end point, so to speak. So being able to tell the students, like, let me go back a little bit. Let's start with giving the assessment. When I give a student an assessment, number one, don't tell them what grade level I'm giving them. You just give them the assessment. And I try not to call it an assessment. I tell them they're giving me homework. I need you to answer these. Can you please answer these questions? In the end, the ones that you struggled with, I have homework now to do stuff to make it better for you. You're giving me homework on what I could do to make your sessions better. So number one, it's going to make the kid feel really empowered, or the teen, that they're giving you something to do. And you can even tell them, like, these are the different goals that we want to work on together. You pick it. You tell me which goal you want to work on. And that as well is really going to help involve the students, even being able to help them write the long versus short-term goals. So being able to say, we really need to work on multiplication. Overwhelming, but we could say we really want to work on the 5s, the 6s, the 7s, and have those short-term goals so that they feel involved. They feel like they have some investment in even what's going on around them. Another way that you can really accomplish your goals is to combine them. I find that if a student has more than one thing they're doing, well, let me say it again. I find that if a student has a need that they're working on, it gets boring if you're working on the exact same goal over and over. So being able to feel like you're making progress by throwing an extra goal in there is great. One example is just having like a sheet of paper, and even if you yourself wants to write down like the number A intermingled with a bunch of B's and a bunch of C's, bam, you got letter recognition and counting at the same time. With older students, I'll have them go through and count the syllables in like a rap that they have, and they're reading, they're counting at the same time. You have students go online and look up different information and do math problems based on store ads, apartment listings, different things like that. Bam, life skills, reading, comprehension, math, all in one. And I always like to remind tutors that when you look at an assignment, don't think we're working on adding. Please think I'm working on strengthening their multiplication skills, their writing skills, their focusing skills, their confidence. It's a combination of all of that. And being able to think that way helps empower you and bring you back like you're making the difference, you're doing things, because honestly you are. You're doing all of those things. And being able to remind yourself that that assignment is not a math assignment. It is a all-around academic comprehension. assignment that they're dealing with. All right. So, excuse me. Last two things we're going to go over is a question that was asked multiple times, so I kind of just combined it, but it was mostly like group tutoring insights is what I decided to call it. What do we do at a group tutoring site? How do we make this entertaining? How do we make this fun? And I love this. It's hidden curriculum. It's being able to be creative and seeing the value in everything. I have some images here that I just found. I am not lying when I tell you this took me a 5-minute Google search. And I went to the images and I saw pictures that the kid thought would be cool. And then I clicked on those. It takes away from the searching and reading through multiple websites. If you click on fun games, interactive activities, go to the images, see what the kids are doing. Does it look manageable? Does it look like a lot of supplies? Going to the websites takes time. It leads to researching. It leads to websites padding it with a lot of words to keep you on their site longer. So go to the picture. If the picture's worth it, go to the site. Right away here, use games you know. Simple deck of cards. That's actually a multiplication game the kids are playing on the floor. It could also be a subtraction game and a matching pattern game. The dominoes, there's tons of math games you could play with dominoes. I Spy books. I really like I Spy books for younger kids with sight word recognition because they're looking for the picture and they might see something else that they think it is. And you can say, no, it's this. Let's write that word down. You found something new, and make your own I Spy word list. It's reading, it's comprehension, it's focusing all in one. Connect 4. It's a really fun game. It gets really competitive. Throwing some numbers in there and saying, once you connect 4, your answer has to add up to an odd number. You don't win unless it's that. And that's the challenge. Adding that extra step in there adds to that fun aspect and combines it with that academicness. And also, it's stuff you can find around the house, stuff you might have lying around. If you don't, you might have friends who have a deck of cards they have lying around. Little things like that where everybody can kind of work together. If you're in a group setting especially, like I mentioned earlier, contact your other tutors and say like, hey, I was researching and found this really cool game with Scrabble tiles. Anybody got Scrabble tiles? Boom. You just have a group chat. Somebody's going to bring them. You guys have a game for the whole workshop. The other reason I really like this hidden curriculum is because these games involve more than one person, so it helps with that behavior management aspect as well. With the Connect 4, you have 2 kids playing. You can have a judge off to the side checking their scores. The dominoes games, there's games that I found that played up to 6 players, where it was like teams of 2 each. So being able to realize that all of this stuff is adaptable, is functional, and even if you want to bring the list of ideas you found to your student and say which one sounds the most fun to you guys, we'll bring it next week. That helps too. It takes away from the stress of planning. Last thing I kind of want to mention with the stress of planning and stuff is in the end, what you're doing for these students clicks. I always like to tell my volunteers here this lovely story, and I really want to kind of end it on this note. One of my first days at School on Wheels, I was asked by a student if I was a petting zoo person. And right away I was like, no, I'm actually not a fan of going to petting zoos. There's a lot of little kids there and it's crowded. And she was like, no, not like a real petting zoo. Like, are you here to pat me on the head and be like, I'm here to help you, little homeless kid, and then leave? It sounds harsh, but that's how I was told by a 13-year-old. So they are very aware of their situation. And I want to remind them, we are not petting zoo people that come, help them once, and leave. We are consistent sources of encouragement, consistent sources of education, comfort, and the students see it. They can tell. Any age. They know that you're going to see them, and they're grateful for it. So please keep that in mind when you're going to your sessions, that anything you could be doing with them is going to be an impact. Even if they're not running up and high-fiving and hugging and showing a lot of expression, that might not be what they were taught. They might have been taught something different, trained, and worked in a certain way that they behave that way. So even a half smile accomplishment with some kids, a thank you, accomplishment with some kids. So please know that if you don't have one of those students that is outwardly emotional and outwardly visually excited, you are still making a difference. You are still instilling things in them. On that note, I also wanted to mention that I know I talk fast and I know I put a lot of information in this workshop, but we do have a ton of workshops available for you guys. So what I did was I went to the School on Wheels website and I looked through all of the workshops we have and found the ones that most connected to the topics we were addressing today. So if there's anything I kind of mentioned where you thought in your head like, well, that's it, I want to kind of expand, or what else can I do? Please look at this list and know that this is a small portion of what we already have available. They're all watch on your own time, very self-sufficient. But on that note, I got a few minutes, but I just wanted also to thank everybody for being here and taking the time to listen, and hope that if you guys have any further questions, you are welcome to email myself or Katie, who is the lovely lady who helped me organize this, and my wonderful colleague. So just wanted to thank everybody and appreciate you, and I'm sure your student does as well.
All right, everyone. That's all she wrote. Thank you so much, Allison.
Thank you, guys.
Happy 7th anniversary today. So
Yay.
Exciting. Thank all of you again for joining us as well. I'm so sorry that we didn't have time for questions, but you know, you can always, again, feel free to reach out to Allison or myself. And if you missed any part of this particular webinar, it will be up on YouTube, perhaps within the next week or so. And you will also be able to find it in our webinar library, which is where those other webinars that Miss Allison was just promoting are located currently. I really hope you all enjoyed this experience as much as I did.
And me.
And I hope that you will all also join us on May 14th for our upcoming webinar on social emotional learning and how to model that and build that with your students. Details will be found on our events calendar very shortly, so everyone keep an eye out.
And also our May 18th home walk. You can sign up on the website.
Yes, everyone please join us for home walk. And yeah, have a lovely day. Thank you.